Live.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Mariana Ramirez, and I'm the Manager of Strategic Initiatives at the Frost Art Museum. We are excited to bring you today's zine workshop as part of FIU's Convocation Week activities. For all of the new students and family members, we are thrilled that you're joining our FIU family. For those of you new to FIU, the Frost Art Museum is on FIU's main campus near the Graham Center and Sculpture Park. We are a free museum for everyone, not just our FIU community, so you are always welcome to come by with family and friends. Once campus reopens, I invite you to visit one of our upcoming exhibitions and get a cafecito at our Vicky's Cafe. Throughout the year, we offer art making workshops, curator-led tours, artist talks, and panels. While we are currently closed to visitors due to COVID-19, we have translated some of these events into virtual programs. Today's zine-making workshop is one of the staples in our programming calendar and was developed by our education specialist, Emily Affrey, who you will hear from in a moment. I would like to briefly introduce you to everyone here today. We are joined by Emily Severio Williams. She is currently an FIU student and works as a student assistant in the LGBTQA initiatives office. We also have Wesley Sanchez, who is assisting us with technology today. And we have Joseph Cusco, who is a current student and member of the Honors College Pride Club. They are both going to tell you a little bit more about those organizations later in the workshop. I will be on chat for the rest of the program, so let us know if you have any questions in the chat box. I would now like to turn this over to an FIU alum and Frost staff member, Emily Affrey.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on our zine workshop, of course, Pride theme. And well, you're probably wondering what in the world is a zine. A zine is short for magazine or a self-made publication that you can easily make as long as you have the materials available. So paper, printed paper, right? Newspapers, magazines, of course, and any kind of text or image that you'd like to include. So they kind of look like a diary, right? That you make collage style with different pages. And technically, zines are meant to serve as a platform for issues in society that a lot of people like to dismiss or not talk about, specifically issues that mainstream society dismisses. So we can talk about things like identity, like sexuality, right? Like immigration, racial discrimination, equality, different topics that are pretty difficult, but are necessary to have the conversations with. So the zine actually started in 1959 with the invention of the Xerox machine. And the idea is that you create one original, like so, and you make a whole bunch of copies, right? So that way you can spread the message of what your zine is talking about with all of these different copies of that original zine. So it became really popular with the feminist movement in the 1960s, and then later on with the punk movement too in the 90s. So really, really cool stuff. Typically, when we have our exhibitions, we take important themes from our exhibitions and we build a zine making workshop around them. Of course, June is Pride Month. Now, you may or may not know that the reason why it's June is because in June of 1969, the Stonewall riots happened in New York, right, where there was a police raid in a gay bar called the Stonewall Inn. And that they encountered resistance by some folks at the bar, specifically led by Marsha P. Johnson, a trans woman of color. And so this major event pretty much served as the impetus for the queer liberation movement. And this is why we commemorate June as a Pride Month. So we are going to be making our own Pride themed zine. Now, we can think about different things like home, acceptance, equality, identity, right? Belonging. Diversity, even inclusion, or anything that you like. The cool thing about a zine is that there are no limitations. You can pretty much do anything you want with it, include song lyrics, poetry, drawings even, right? But all of them have to have a title. So as you can see here, they all got a title, whether you think about that in the beginning, the middle, or the end of your process, just make sure you have one, right? So I'm gonna get started with showing you how to fold a zine out of one sheet of paper. Now you can have a large sheet of paper like this or an 8.5 by 11. So a standard size construction paper or copy paper is totally fine. But what you want to do is take your sheet of paper. So everyone can see my sheet of paper there. And you're going to fold it in half 3 times. So let's get this first fold here, 1, then the second fold, 2, and your third fold. Now, once you have that fold, you're going to want to open it up about halfway, just like this, and you're going to cut this middle crease here, but not all the way. You just want to hit about half the paper, right? And then what you're going to do is you're going to open it up, and you should have a slit just like that. Now, once you've made your slit, you are now going to fold it hot dog style, or veggie hot dog style if you're a vegetarian like me. And you are going to press down to make sure your pages are going to get nice and creased, okay? Then you're going to take the edges. And by the way, if you're getting a little lost in this process, there is a link for how to properly fold this page on our YouTube. So if you're interested in that, you can search that up real quick. And you are going to fold in. I always have a tricky time with this part. Okay. And essentially, you should have the pages for your zine already made. Okay. There's no need to staple because your pages would be right here. Perfect. So now we can get started with cutting and pasting, which takes the majority of the, takes much of the time for the zine making. And you are going to search through different magazines, newspapers, anything you like. I like to sometimes have pre-cut images of things that I've scanned in the past. Oh, we got a glue stick. All right. Woo! You know, usually, give me 1 second. All right. So usually, usually I'm much more graceful, but today I am not. Thank you for sticking with us, and thank you for the glue stick. Now, this is what's going to take most of the time. So actually, Emily, it's so weird that I feel like I'm talking to you because you also have my same name. But now that I've gone through this introduction, I want to hear more about your role, right, at the LGBTQA initiatives and what kind of services or resources you all have for students here on campus.
Hi, so as you guys know, my name is Emily. As we go through this zine workshop, I think you could probably just call me Emily S. if anybody needs to refer to me. Might make our lives a little bit easier. But I'm a student assistant at the LGBTQA Initiatives Office here at FIU. I do want to drop in the chat the Instagram we have, which is sort of like our home base for most of the information that we relay to students. So I encourage you guys, if you're interested in the office and to see what we do, to keep an eye out on our Instagram, which we update regularly with events. And I'm also going to drop in the chat a link to our website, which is also linked in our Instagram. We have a Linktree link in our bio. And this is also, there's less pictures than the Instagram, but it's also an explanation of most of the things we do at FIU. But I do want to explain that, you know, we have a variety of programming and trainings, and our main goal is to support and uplift LGBTQ students, faculty, and staff at FIU. So we have a variety of programming, and, you know, during quarantine, it's been a bit of a time to adapt for all of us. And so one of the things that we've sort of constructed during quarantine, we came up with programming that we do every week, Monday through Friday. We call them our That's So Queers. So there are conversations that we have. They're about an hour long since they're on IG Live. And we sort of have discussions around different topics in the LGBTQA community. We've had discussions about LGBTQA representation in video games. We've had discussions where we've brought in professors to sort of talk about research they've done in the community in their own time, like transgender healthcare. So we've been doing those every week. And we also take, a lot of our office sort of revolves around student involvement. So a lot of the topics we've gotten have been student requested. We have students come on board to talk on our IG Lives. And most of our, what's it called, office sort of connects and relates to other organizations around campus. So we sort of help manage and we help collaborate with events on different organizations on campus because we have a very rich LGBTQ community on campus. So we have other organizations like the Honors College Pride Club, which Joseph Kuzco is in. We have other organizations that we're related to, like SHARP. We often work with the Women's Center. So we're sort of like a home base for LGBTQ students at FIU, but we do relate to a lot of other sort of clubs and organizations.
Yeah, I've actually seen the programming that you have on IG Live. It's pretty awesome, and you're really good with promoting these talks, right? Instagram has probably been like the biggest source of news, really, too, for university students and just young people in general now, especially with everything that's going on, right, in our nation. Thank you for sharing that. I see that Joseph is also with us too. So Joseph, you're from the Honors Pride Club. Thanks for joining us today. Why don't you also talk to us about what the Pride Club is, right? And what you all have to offer students here on campus.
Of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Joseph. I'm here representing the Honors College Pride Club. So we're part of the Honors College here at FIU, and the great part about being inside the Honors College is that we're very academically focused, but we also want to teach everyone about the LGBT community. So this is a club that's open to everybody. So a lot of people in the past have been confused about being like, oh, this is an honors college club, so I can't be in it, and that's the farthest thing from the truth. The Honors College Pride Club is open to absolutely everybody. So we have events all the time. So right now for the summer, we're taking our little summer break, having fun, and we're having some IG lives here and there. But when we get back into fall, we're going to go back into the full swing of things. And so, yeah, and so some of our signature events that we've had in the past. So for example, this past spring during February for Black History Month, we actually had a queer Black experiences panel event. Cool. Where, yeah, it was amazing. We had so many people in attendance, and it was to highlight the queer Black experience. And so we touched upon a lot of people like Marsha P. Johnston. We touched upon a lot of different communities that exist inside the Black community, in the queer Black community. And so so that way you guys can keep updated with us, I'm going to be popping a link to our IG page on the chat in a few moments, just so that way you guys can keep up with us. And there's also going to be a link there for the Panther Connect network, which basically helps you connect with all the other clubs and organizations on campus, including us.
Awesome, thank you. See, like, the great thing is that there's so many different resources on campus. You just have to kind of research, right? There are a lot of different hubs and places that you can find home in. Mine was the radio station a long time ago, but maybe yours could be the LGBTQ initiatives or the Honors Pride Club or even the Frost Art Museum, right? So speaking of quarantine, which we've been in since March, right? Why don't you both tell me about how that experience has been for you? Have you spent time maybe learning a new skill, watching Netflix, getting into some of those shows that are trending, or even listening to music lately?
So my quarantine, I live in a crowded house. I live with 6 other people because I'm back home. I live in Orlando, and I'm actually an art student. So I've been finding between my classes, because I just started semester B, I've been finding time to actually sit down and draw again. Not that I wasn't drawing when I was in class, but a lot of the artwork I did when I was in classes last semester and the semester before was very much centered on getting a project done for class. So, and that didn't just rely on drawing. Sometimes I remember we did a plaster project back last semester, and what I like to do is I like to sit and draw with graphite, and I've always been terrible at coloring, so I'm trying to get better with colored pencils and online programs, coloring digitally, but that's sort of been my quarantine so far.
Cool. Is drawing like your main medium?
Yeah, it's pretty much my main medium. I would like to be well-rounded, so I try to do things that I'm not as comfortable with. Like a few years ago, I took a ceramics class and actually really enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to maybe taking one at FIU because I haven't taken a ceramics class at FIU. This was back in high school, but I mainly draw.
Cool, cool. Have you been watching anything? Maybe that like even if it's not art related, have you watched any shows to kind of keep busy? It's always
I was
good
actually
to hone in on your skills. Like I've been trying to teach myself how to play piano, because I
yeah.
sing, but I don't play an instrument, unfortunately, and that helps with songwriting. So it's definitely good that now we can't say we don't have the time to work on what we love, right?
hmm Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like to sing too, but I don't have any instruments at home to learn how to play. But I have been watching Pose. I was actually just watching it the other day.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
I have yet to start it.
It's really, really good. Like, I highly recommend it for people who are interested in watching content about the LGBTQA community, especially because voguing and ballroom culture is so integral to, people of color's lives and the Black community within the LGBTQ community. And it's really such a well-produced show. And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I'll get through an episode and I'm like, okay, that's it for today, because there's a lot to think about,
The
and then
nature
I'll
of
like marathon the next.
binging.
Yeah, but I totally recommend it. It's on Netflix. I think the first two seasons are on Netflix, and I can't remember if they have another season, but I'm gonna watch the second one with my uncle soon.
Okay, Joseph, have you seen Pose?
I have actually. I've watched it like since it first came out, and like thankfully I have like cable, so I'm able to watch it like every week when it comes out the new episode. And it's just amazing to see like my history put onto that screen, because
Yeah.
so like I have friends, and like I'm not super involved in the ball culture here in Miami, because it's like nowadays getting into ball culture is a lot harder than how it used to be. Getting into ball culture back in the 80s was kind of like, oh, you hear where it's gonna happen and you go.
Mhm.
Versus like nowadays it's like you have to join a Facebook group, and like they have to let you know when it's going to be and where it's going to be, and it's not like in Pose where it's like every like 2 weeks or so. It's like they'll have like maybe like a ball every 2 months, every month, something like that. It all depends on
Yeah.
the Facebook group, but
Yeah, it
something
does.
that's what
I've
were you gonna
seen,
say?
yeah, no, that it definitely does, and I've seen that with Miami, like what is it, the catwalks,
Yes.
the voguing competition and stuff. They've even done like some virtual stuff, but you do have to be well integrated into those Facebook groups to be able to really know what's going on. That's true.
Yeah, but something that's really nice is that so like I'm a big promoter of Old Way. And let me just, for the attendees here that they're probably like, what's Old Way? So voguing actually has two different forms right now. So there's Old Way, which if you ever watch Pose, that's what they do a lot of. It's a lot of Old Way, which is like, think of like Madonna in like the music video Vogue, where you're
Mhm.
like Vogue like this, like that. Versus New Way, it's a lot more acrobatic almost,
Yeah,
where
it's
they're
like the
doing a
duck
lot
walking
more.
or something. Like, is it called duck walking? The one where you're on the floor and it just looks really intense cardio. Like, is
Yeah,
that
that's,
old way?
I believe that's considered Old Way.
Okay, okay, cool,
Yeah,
cool.
New Way, if you want, there's a lot of YouTube videos on it of there's a, I can't remember his name right now, but there was a great competition, and maybe like 2 years ago, where you just see one kid working it in Old Way, which is a lot of that old fashioned, more like, Madonna movement of Vogue,
Hmm.
versus you have the other kid who is going up against him, that is literally like jumping and flipping over the other kid, and doing a lot of splits and like I guess what is now called death drops, which is
Yeah.
actually called traditionally a dip, actually.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't know that. And I know that like voguing is such a huge part of not only ballroom slash drag culture, but of like queer identity. So like talk to me about like why it's not just a performance, right? So what is so special about these kinds of dances and this notion of just getting together and voguing and being part of these catwalks and things like that?
Yeah. So they actually touch upon it in Pose, but basically the reason why this whole ballroom culture came out was because people could not be themselves out in public, and they couldn't be themselves and be accepted at the same time. And so what would happen was is that they would they would be like, oh, I want to be like on the cover of Vogue, for example, but they can't. So what would they do? They would go to these balls and you would say feel the fantasy. You would feel like you're there, that you're like this amazing person on the cover of Vogue, like some rich some rich white woman walking around down Manhattan on Fifth Avenue with her fur coat and pearls. Like that's how you'd feel, because you would feel like you're finally accepted somewhere where you can be yourself and be this amazing, dramatic, over the top person and still be accepted.
So it's definitely about this notion of belonging, right?
Exactly. And then Vogue actually came out of, I guess it came out of this idea that where gangs would like have actual violence in bulk culture, there were a lot of these houses, and so these houses were tight-knit families almost.
Yeah.
And what would happen was is that instead of like actually fighting like fisticuffs and stuff like that between each other, they would vogue. Voguing old way was developed as a way of kind of like being like, see me, I am better than you. And if you look at the emotions actually of it, if you think about it, like, look at me, I am better than you. Like if you look at that, that's me saying I'm better than you.
Or at least maybe like on equal footing, right? Like
Exactly.
yeah, like you can have be on the same level to where you can have an insightful conversation, right, about differences, or at least offer the chance to speak, I guess on an equal leveling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Emily, would you say that Pose does a good job at kind of explaining these important themes?
I think what Pose does right is that sorry, I muted myself. They recognize that the LGBTQ community founded this idea, because it definitely did get popularized with, songs like Madonna's Vogue. But it recognized how important Black, POC, and especially trans lives were in the formation of this movement. And I think over anything, because it is a TV show and there is some level of dramatization and to sort of keep viewers watching, but I think they understand how integral that was to the community, and something so culturally big that bleeds into life in many forms as voguing and ballroom culture. I think they got that right. And I think I think even just the concept of voguing is so important to the LGBTQ community, because it ties into the idea of identity and sort of understanding who you are and how you interact with your community and the rest of the world. And I think that Pose does an excellent job at that.
Of course. Now, when we're talking about this notion of community, like, so some of us watching, we may or may not identify within the LGBTQ plus communities, right? So how can we be better allies to the LGBTQ plus communities? Like, what can we do? What is it that we can do maybe on campus, even as a good starting point for how we can show our support to our fellow peers?
Something that I know has helped a lot of allies is actually we've had a lot of people come to our Pride Club meetings, and they're allies, and they have almost no idea about the LGBT community, but they want to learn and they want to be there and be better. They want to, for example, like one of the events that we're most likely going to be having this, we're going to be having actually at the end of spring, but we've moved it to fall, is we're going to be having a pronouns lecture. Well, not a lecture, but almost like a interactive class, I guess you can call it.
Cool.
And it's specifically geared toward like allies and people that have never experienced that, where they are they meet someone who is trans or non-binary, and they're not used to using they them pronouns. It's to help them be better allies, and like recognize that some people that people say, well, I prefer to be called by they them pronouns, and so they can recognize that and affirm that person. Because a straight, and like, to my own experience and from friends of my own friends, when someone who has no idea about anything about that, but they still call you they, or he or she, or whatever you choose, and they call you by that after you tell them, it's so affirming, because your whole life you're told, oh, you're he, when you don't, you're not he, you're she, for example, or you're they.
Yeah, and you never want to assume anyone's identity either, right? So that's cool.
Exactly.
That's cool that you all have that going on. It's important to be educated in order to educate others, right? So what about how do you think the pandemic has affected the LGBTQ community, like specifically? I don't know if maybe you've seen any or heard anything from friends, or seen anything going on maybe over social media that you see that is that the pandemic is specifically impacting the community, and maybe how we can help.
I think one of the hardest things that we sort of realized very early on was the idea even of quarantine, that a lot of people were confined to their homes, especially with university students being sent home. And you have to acknowledge that for the LGBT community, a sort of common theme and experience is sort of being ostracized and excluded. And sometimes it can result in the people you love sort of pushing you away because they don't understand you. And it's a hard battle for many LGBTQ lives. And with quarantine, when you're forced to go home to your only financial option, maybe of staying with your parents, it isn't true for everybody that this is necessarily a safe place to be. It could be a toxic place where their identities are not respected. They could be physically in danger, and sort of a lot of people were facing the fact that this was where they had to return to because they had no other option. So I know that FIU, that are I believe the head of housing was taking it personally to try and interact and coordinate with students who are having these difficulties and offer them housing in accordance to their situations and pay and all that. So I think FIU has done a good job at trying to analyze people's need, especially with offering financial aid and stuff like that. I know that the multiple clubs and organizations and even the LGBTQ office were making sure to interact with students and sort of discuss with people in need, like how they can access resources. I think an important time for even people who aren't in these situations is to look into LGBTQ organizations online who are helping fund these people and get them places to stay. If you Google it, Google is just such a great resource for being able to find more. But if you ever want to know more about how you can sort of contact these organizations and how to find them, you can always contact any of the clubs on campus, our office in particular. But there are definitely people who are in need right now, in addition to the threat of the pandemic and all that.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. So much information. A lot of the times we don't know until we ask, right? And how has it been for you personally? I know that at least staying home is sometimes easy for some, right? And not for others. I personally don't like my home environment, so I've been able to, thankfully, be able to quarantine elsewhere. But I know maybe with a crowded household, it could be difficult sometimes, especially with a Hispanic family or non-Hispanic family that just happens to have a lot of relatives. But that's cool. At least, you know, you still have drawing and things that we can focus on, right? If we don't have these other resources available to us. How are our zines looking so far? I want to remind everybody that as we're talking and you're listening, you can just search for images that are pertinent to the theme of your zine, right? So I have this page here. I don't know if everybody can see, but it says you have the power to change your future. It looks kind of ugly, but I'm working on it. So I can talk a lot about art, but my art making is not necessarily the best, but we're doing it. So let's see. Do you have any questions for me and about the Frost and like what we're doing with the LGBTQ plus communities, what we have been doing, how we can serve other students? Like what kind of questions do you both have for me?
I do want to say I had the chance to see one of the more recent exhibits. I believe it was called Art Through Stonewall.
Oh, yeah, Art After Stonewall.
And it was such an amazing exhibit to be able to see, you know, LGBTQ lives and artwork made by our community. And I wanted to ask sort of what went into the formation of that exhibit, and if you guys have any plans to do anything similar, LGBTQ themed or that has LGBTQ artists in the future.
Well, maybe Mariana can help me out with this one. But this exhibition, I know that the museum was planning it for a long time, right? And the museum has been making strides towards having exhibitions that are really talking about issues that matter, especially to university students, right? And a lot of times these are questions around identity and belonging and diversity, right? And so that was really special for us to have because it was the first major retrospective of art relating to queer history. So that was really important for us. Mariana, I don't know if you want to add anything?
Sure. So the Art After Stonewall was actually curated by the Columbus Museum of Art, or organized by the Columbus Museum. So it traveled around the country. We were the third venue, I believe. And yeah, it was up this past fall in honor of the Stonewall riots. So we were absolutely thrilled to be able to offer. It was a huge exhibit that took up our entire second floor, which is 6 galleries. Normally our exhibitions are sort of, you know, are not that large. They normally will each be about 3 galleries each. So it was a very huge exhibit that showed both archival and historical images as well as artwork created by LGBTQ artists. But this was actually, we had a couple other exhibits prior to that. We had an exhibition by Laura Aguilar. She was a photographer. She passed away. She was a photographer from LA, Latinx and lesbian, and she photographed a lot of the people within her community in the 80s and 90s, trying to show her friends through her artwork. And then we had another exhibition actually right before Stonewall. It was a series of photographs by Jess Dugan looking at, she is a portrait artist, and with her partner Vanessa Fabre, they worked together to collaborate on this exhibition of older transgender individuals. So, you know, really some of these individuals that were very much like making the way in their culture. And so they these were very beautiful portraits that also had a biography that went along with them. I think coming up, I'll have to take a double check, and I'll let you know when we get back in. We definitely are including LGBTQ artists in our exhibitions. I don't know that we have one right now that's specifically geared on an LGBTQ theme, but I will look that up and see if I can get back to you by the end of this program.
Yeah, we'll definitely always have events though, like this one, you know, so even if we're virtual, we'll still try to come up with a way to make sure that these topics are being discussed, right? At least in a fun way. But definitely. Joseph, did you get a chance to see Art After Stonewall?
I almost forgot to unmute myself. I actually did. And I thought it was so wonderful to go see it because um it's very empowering to see that like in a museum like the Frost, like it I believe some people kind of don't realize how big the Frost is because we like some people forget that we have the Frost Science Museum over in downtown, and then we have a Frost Art Museum right on campus. And to see such like what I think such an influential museum in Miami having such an important discussion and having um, that there is so important and so amazing to finally see.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's always something that I've personally liked about working here, right? That the shows are really focusing on things that people like us want to talk about and that we want others to get engaged in the conversation with also, right? I think also too, I had a friend, the last thing I'll mention about Art After Stonewall was that show also focused a lot, or at least had a lot of representation on lesbian women and relationships and like topics like motherhood, right? Like lesbian motherhood and a lot of different things that we don't really hear about, you know, in contemporary conversations. So that was also something that was pretty cool regarding that show. But definitely, we're thinking about all these things, right? And taking them into consideration as we plan moving forward when it comes to shows and to programs. So how are we doing so far with our zines? They're looking okay. Let me see. I found this really cool glittery paper here that I'm going to add. Another quick tip for zine making. Usually I like to layer with printed paper, right? That adds texture. So it could have glitter on it. It could have any kind of embellishment, right? And you can go ahead and just layer your pages with all of these different prints and designs and patterns. And then you can start adding your images on top. So you have like a nice foundation for your images. Again, the power of text and image is very important, right? So if we think about things like Stonewall, you know, if we think about things like protest, a big part of that are these signs, right? So you have a group of people that are coming together for a common cause, and they have these huge signs that are representing the messages that they're trying to get across, right? And so there's something very powerful about an idea or a thought that you have in your head that you end up making real on paper, right? And so even if you just read something from far away and you don't do anything about what you just read, the point is that you read it anyway, right? And so you're bringing this issue to light, you're bringing this to awareness. So I think that's something that's very powerful that the zines also have, right? So if you come across an idea or a thought that has been placed onto a page in a zine, it could have some kind of impact, and we never know how much that impact could have on someone who's reading it, right? So, all right, I think I am almost done here. I also wanted to mention, I'm not sure if it's already on the chat, but there's a Pride playlist for you that we have made on behalf of the Frost and behalf of our panelists here, with some tunes that we've been listening to throughout quarantine. I know that I'm kind of obsessed with the song Babylon by Lady Gaga off of the latest album. It's kind of a dance album, you know. I wish there were more ballads, but that's what she wanted to do, you know, like a dance, comprehensive dance album, very like 90s club vibes. There's a song on there with Elton John, and it's kind of funny because he actually sounds like Adam Lambert on it. But yes, that's what you can find a bunch of cool pop jams on there. I know that Emily S contributed, so you'll see some of her picks there as well. And I think that might do it for us, right? So do you have any questions or anything you'd like to say regarding zines, regarding the Frost Art Museum, your department? Anything that maybe some messages for students listening that of encouragement or support that you might want to get out there right now before we log off?
I think I want to say to the students who are watching, whether or not they're incoming or current students, is that, you know, we're in strange times right now, but I think the most important part is to sort of practice self-care and to give yourself a time to take a break and sort of enjoy your life. I think even in the practice of making these zines, although you can sort of like veer into more intense topics of like trying to depict womanhood in like a little booklet, I think it's important for us to also realize like you can take time to just enjoy the tactile feeling of cutting out paper and pasting it on another sheet of paper. And I would like everybody to know, like in this Zoom call, that, you know, there are resources to help you. So sometimes when you can't figure out how to help yourself, you know, as a university, we have different offices and resources for mental health. There's a whole community of LGBTQ students at FIU. If you want to come in contact as a fellow LGBTQ student, as an ally, we are here to help you.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you. Joseph, anything else you'd like to say before we log off?
Yeah, sure. So I just want everyone here in this Zoom call to know that even though we're having to do these Zoom calls for now, FIU will open back up soon. And so that means that there is, even though we, as Emily just said, we are in strange times, there is always going to be a light at the end of the tunnel, just telling us that there is hope still there for us and that there is still goodness that can come out of all of this.
Definitely, definitely. I agree with both of you. Like, it is important to practice self-care during this time, you know. I've been reading a lot of, I had been reading a lot of things on social media that said, like, it's okay if one day you do absolutely nothing during this entire time. Like, you don't have to feel pressured to feel productive. And if you do feel productive, great, you know, because now we can allocate our time to things that we wish we would have, you know, spent time focusing on before, when we were stuck kind of with the everyday busyness of the routine of what we used to think was normal life, right? And so, yeah, definitely feel empowered to maybe focus on a new skill, you know, listen to music, call up an old friend, you know, or reach out to these departments on campus, maybe even tune in to one of our art making, you know, videos. We have Teaching Tuesdays, you know, different things are going on, right? That you can kind of just entertain yourself with to get away from everything that's going on right now. I'd like to thank you both so much for joining.
Actually, Emily, if I could jump in real quick, just to answer your earlier question. We want to let everyone know about our upcoming exhibitions this fall, one of which is House to House, which will commemorate the 100th anniversary of women gaining the right to vote. And a variety of artists are included in this exhibition. And I'm getting a text from our curator right now, artists who are LGBTQ. And of course, Catherine Opie isn't there, who is, you know, one of the phenomenal, iconic photographers, American photographers today. Her photograph, Oliver in a Tutu, is absolutely a gorgeous photograph. It's her son in a tutu when he's maybe like 3-4 years old. So we'll have this really kind of iconic work at the museum. And then we also have a few more artists, Ramiro Gomez and Leonard S. I'll put these in the chat, but Octavia Yearwood as well, who we actually had at the museum. She gave a talk last year. So we will have a variety of several LGBTQ artists this coming fall, and hopefully we will be able to share our reopening date sometime soon because we want everyone to come visit us in person. Great, Emily.
Oh, definitely. No, yeah, thank you so much. I'm actually really excited for that show, so I hope you all can come by and check it out when you can. So I want to thank everybody for participating, all the panelists. Mariana, thank you. And thank you all watching. Freshman year is a lot of fun. You know, you will face some difficulties as a freshman, as we all do when we enter new things, but that is the most beautiful part about it, right? And if you ever need anything, you can always holler at us over here at the Frost Art Museum, over at LGBTQA Initiatives, and of course, the Honors Pride Club. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope to see you next time.
Thank you.